Okay, hello, hello. Problem with worshipping something. So, what's the problem with worshipping something? First of all, let's break down what it means to worship something, or um, how does that actually manifest in real life? So, generally, when you have some form of belief, um, it has sources where it originates from. So you have you, obviously, your own consciousness, your own entity. Then you have other sources, such as, I don't know, let's just say other, literally, other, right? And a lot of beliefs are you can form directly, or there are ones that you solicit a view of other, and they lead you to a certain belief. Let me explain what that means. So, for example, when I look at um, this object, I might have a personal belief that it is colored yellow and it has black borders. That is my own personal beliefs that this is a rectangle, right? It's something that I have, how should I say, my consciousness went through the process of, let's just say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not gonna break it down that much. So, my consciousness has solicited my, visual, um, receptors, my eyes, yeah, just my eyes, and have told me, information, and I have interpreted this information, and I believe that it is true. I believe that I am not hallucinating. That's my belief right now. I believe that I am, uh, sane enough to come to this, realization or conclusion that this is a rectangle and it is what we call to be yellow, right? And I didn't just make this up. But that is my belief. I have no way of proving this belief. I have no way of validating it because who knows? Maybe my I woke up today and my eyes just chose violence. They've just for some reason inverted all the colors and it's actually green. If it's green or not, I have no way of validating it. Um, I only have my own personal belief in my own, um, senses, which is still a belief. It's not a concrete. Um, you can't know it's for sure, but you can choose to believe it or not. For example, I see it and to me it appears yellow and it appears to be a rectangle with black stroke. I still have a choice whether I believe it or not. I could think it's a hallucination and I think that no, maybe my eyes are faulty and it is actually green. So I can choose to believe something else, regardless of what I am observing. So the thing I'm trying to highlight is, well, actually, I'm gonna add one more example. So let's say, again, I wake up and it appears to me to be yellow, and then everyone else walked in and told me that it is green. Everyone was like, "Bro, you're colorblind. You're colorblind. You're colorblind. Ha 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 ha." And if I were to speak to 30 people and they were all to say that I'm colorblind, hey, I will probably actually consider them. I will consider the point. Maybe it is green and I am colorblind. I've just woken up and something, went horribly wrong, and now I don't see the colors the same way I used to. Except whether they're, how should I say, in that example, I have, instead of just soliciting with my, instead of just trusting my senses, I have now trusted someone else's judgment and their senses or their view, their consensus on it. And now I have just entered something where I believe them. But it also could be a 1st of April fool's prank or something like that, where they're all trying to gaslight me into believing that it is green, but it's actually yellow. And this stuff actually does work. There's some experiments that have been done where they ask like really stupid questions, like really simple questions, like what kind of the similar caliber as the what color is this? And they had a whole bunch of actors and the person being tested, and they had all the actors pick the wrong answers. And then this, and what they found is that many people found the need to conform when in a group setting. So let's say you think it is yellow, but if everyone else picks it as green, statistically you're likely to pick that it is also green, regardless of your senses, just because we're group animals, we're group herd. So we will often go against our senses or against common sense. Like we'll go um, and pick something that even we are like, how should I say? This is kind of where traits such as agreeable and disagreeable originate from. So you, how agreeable and how disagreeable you are originates from how much faith you place on your own judgment of things. For example, um, an agreeable person might look at yellow and then other people tell him it's green, and then they'll actually consider their perspective and be like, yeah, maybe I'm probably wrong. They don't put much faith into their own judgment. While there are people that are very disagreeable and it doesn't fucking matter what anyone will tell them. If they see it as yellow, it's yellow. To them, their own perceptions are absolute, and those people are um, immune to uh, having their perception manipulated by other people uh, as much. Like they just rely on their own senses, but they're less socially comfortable. They'll have harder time integrating into society. So you have agreeable and disagreeable people, and they those traits affect whether how likely you are to accept a belief that goes against your own views. Another thing that affects how easy you are to change your belief is, so on top of just being agreeable and disagreeable, or it's kind of a part of it, is how much you respect people around you. For example, if you are looking at this and you think it is yellow, but someone who's much more qualified than you, much more sophisticated in your own eyes. You'll be like, some scientist has officially come and told me that it is green, and you really respect science, and you think that scientists are very intelligent, more intelligent than you, then you will be more prone to considering that they are right and you're wrong. So it's also about how much you respect the perspective of the one who's offering you the alternative belief. So, um, like a more realistic example is you might be talking to uh, I'm trying to think of like a relatable one. Okay, let's say you're talking to some computer nerd or some programmer or some shit, right? Someone who has some or or a doctor. I think doctor is really good because they're it's a very professional field that is very um isolated in a sense. Like you're either a doctor or you're not a doctor, and if you're not a doctor, you're probably just, unqualified to have any opinion on health, apparently. Um, and it's something that's been extremely um I don't know the word for it. Gate kept almost intellectually. Like, oh, another non-doctor talking about health. Like, what basis do they know? What grounds do they have? And it's something that, a lot of people care about. It has a lot of prestige and respect. So, let's say you have something wrong. I don't know. You got some infection or something, and the doctor tells you, no, it's this. We need to amputate your foot or something. So like the doctor is telling you one opinion, and you have your opinion, and a lot of people will just be like, well, a doctor's more qualified than me. He knows what he's talking about. I'm stupid. I haven't had a medical degree. I haven't studied this. Therefore, I don't have the mental faculties to challenge their opinion. And that's why a lot of people completely like bend over when doctors are giving them their opinions. Um, and this is in fields of psychology, and this is in fields of. I'm gonna bring up psychology because that's the one that is the most problematic modern day, in my opinion. Like surgical, in my opinion, is a lot more reinforced, but there's a lot of questionable parts within medicine. I'll stick with psychology because that's what I would say I understand a little bit better. So you might have like one view, but whatever doctor says will override your belief because you believe that you're not qualified and you don't have the tools to come to that conclusion. That has no impact on whether he is wrong or you're wrong. You could be 100% correct and they can tell you that you're wrong, and then um, you will believe them that you're wrong, but you might have been correct. And you have no way of verifying that a lot of the time. So, I guess the thing I'm trying to highlight is your own competence in the field, your own confidence in your own ability to make judgments relative to whoever is offering the alternative solution will have an impact, and your own agreeability and disagreeability, like your own character traits, will affect how easy you are to um, how easy it is to override your belief or how easy it is to convince you of something. Whether that is for good or bad, I am not saying at all right now. It could be a good thing. You could be the dumbest person ever, and for you, honestly, it might be the most, uh, the, you know, productive thing to never ever trust your own judgment. You might be that stupid. And there are people this stupid. A lot of you will be this stupid, where you're completely incapable of making your own decisions, and that should be completely outsourced, because if we let you cook anything, then we're gonna be eating some cursed shit, you know? So yeah, um, for better or for worse, there are people that are easy to influence, and there are people that are hard to influence. So another example of where this you might be hard to influence, but you might be dumb as fuck, and you could be the stubborn, stupid type of person, right? You might have full confidence in your own beliefs, but you might be wrong. Um, so the thing I'm trying to highlight is the traits of being intelligent. What I mean is like how correct or not, and how confident you are. These are not really, you can't really plot a graph and see like a pattern between them. Well, I would argue that you can, but in reality, it looks something like you've probably seen the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it looks something like it looks something like this. I think the true Dunning-Kruger. A lot of people like to fuck. I don't know what the true Dunning-Kruger is. I don't remember anymore. But there's two variations of the graph that people show. There's this one, and then there's the something like that. And I don't know. I've seen both being presented as Dunning-Kruger. I don't know which one's the original one, but the one that is I've found to be actually accurate is the first one. Why? Because a lot of I don't know. First of all, I'll explain why people consider the other one. A lot of people think that they've heard the saying like the more you know, the less you know, or like the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know. And I think that's kind of just people observing themselves in a position where they're smart enough to realize how dumb they are, but they're not smart enough to actually figure everything out. And they think that they're really smart, and they think that's where the graph ends, because they're incapable of observing the rest, and they just think that anyone that has higher confidence, um, also I mix these around, it's something like this, um, and they look at anyone who has higher confidence and they'll just assume they're retarded, which is not true. To be, I'll not go into detail, maybe I'll make a separate video in later, but to be extremely intelligent, you need to have, like, to reach the highest form of intelligence, in my opinion, you need to have a high degree of confidence, because actually, I will go into that. Because if you can't trust your own judgment, yes, that is useful for um, uh, developing like critical thinking and getting rid of like false beliefs, and that drops your confidence, realizing how stupid you are. But then you enter what I call like mediocrity, and in mediocrity, how you get out of mediocrity is you stop. Um, so mediocrity is characterized by where you just realize that you're not capable of, like, you're not as smart as you would think you are, and you're wrong about a lot of things, and you start questioning yourself. You start, uh, applying some critical reasoning and being like, well, uh, you start thinking about things, and then how you get out of that is by stopping to think about things, by actually finding the solutions and finding them in a way where they cannot be false. So what separates a mediocre person between like a very intelligent person is ability to take ownership of their assumptions or beliefs. So, for example, again, back to the box is yellow. I might what will characterize a mediocre person versus a high intelligence person is the high intelligence person will be able to go, well, all of you are telling me it is green, but I have the faculties to uh, observe it and test for myself whether I am what we call is like conventionally colorblind or not. I don't know, maybe they'll find a website to test if they're colorblind or not, and or whatever I've observed locally. There's things that are cannot be false. For example, there might be a certain flower type, or they might have a yellow shirt, and they look at their shirt and it's still yellow. That means that their vision didn't change, and everyone else is fucking bullshitting them, right? And I, whatever, but they'll find these little like things that kind of reinforce their belief, and they'll be like, well, for that to be false would be unreasonable, and they're able to find correct things and be certain of their answers to a point where even if a million people were to um, question their belief, they'll be like, well, uh, none of you have provided sufficient argumentation or reasoning for me to actually change it. For example, let's say I like to when coaching people, I often bring up this example. Let's say if I were to ask you, how many push-ups can you do right now? Right? Imagine in your head how many push-ups you can do. And I'm talking like good form. And if you have the time, please go ahead and pause the video and try to do the push-ups and see how many you can do. Now that you've gotten a number or you've went ahead and tried, what if I told you that however many push-ups you did, you were like, you're wrong. You can only do 10 push-ups. You're weak as fuck. Like if you're watching this video, it means you can only do 10 push-ups max, no more. You're like weak as fuck. Um, or actually no, I'm gonna change it. 5 push-ups. You guys are even weaker. You guys are fucking plant arms. And if I were to proudly exclaim that you can only do 5 push-ups and you've just done 10 or more than 5, you will be like, well, fuck you, you're retarded. You know, I just did 10 and I know I'm right. I've observed my local reality. I know for sure that is 10. But if you hadn't done those 10 push-ups and I started telling you you can't do 5, then I might have actually been able to convince you of that because you hadn't been able to validate that uh, locally with your own reality. So, um, by doing push-ups and knowing how many you can do, you develop a certain degree of confidence in your own belief of how many push-ups you can do. So you might have a belief, I can do 10 push-ups. After going ahead and doing the push-ups, you might only be able to do 5. Yes, it will crush your belief, but it will replace it with a new belief. I can do 5 push-ups. And then if some person were to come along and hate on you, like me, and were to say you can only do 2 push-ups, I cannot crush this belief anymore because if you are like even remotely intelligent or competent, you will just go, oh, well, I've done 5, and 5 is more than 2. And it's over. You've just gotten direct evidence, direct observation of reality. Um, a bit, a bit, it seems like it goes off, but it's not. Basically, by the same mechanism, intelligence works. If you are extremely, so to escape mediocrity into uh, higher levels of intelligence, you need to start testing things and validating them locally such that regardless of who the fuck, regardless of who they are, even if I was the push-up god 101, like I was the master telling you, and I was the most qualified person on push-ups, and I told you you can't do five, but you've already done more than five, then it doesn't matter how credible or how high status I am, you will still uh, not have a reason to trust me because you've already seen the real answer. And intelligence, like the problem with mediocrities is they don't have the confidence to make such assertions and they don't prove things. So certainly that other people are always able to make them question themselves, and they just get stuck in this like philosophizing, self-questioning circle where they're incapable of making any progress long term. They're just forever like, yeah, oh, stuck in their own like low confidence, low medium intellect kind of space. But to leave that, you need to actually become a little bit ignorant, which a lot of mediocrities actually think when they see someone with high confidence, they assume that they're stupid. That is not true. For you to have high intelligence, you need to have high confidence. Because if you don't have this, any retard, anyone could come in and just question you, and then you won't, and you will spend so much time uh, reviewing whether it's true or not that you will not have time to actually um, you will just run out of energy. You'll not be able to actually learn something. For example, at least what I found in my life is a realization that some people are stupid and you shouldn't even consider their opinion has been the most liberating thing ever. In a sense that before I used to consider everyone's opinions and be like, let me think about that. And I'll think about it for hours or days or some things even months and years. And then something like clicked in me and I was like, that's a really stupid question. Why the fuck am I even considering it? And my life hasn't been the same since. If you realize that a lot of people, they don't actually have any reasoning behind their logic, therefore you have no reason to even consider their logic, you save yourself a lot of effort and a lot of time. It's like imagine if you're, uh, I don't know, you're walking down the street, and some random like heroin addict is like, "You're gay." Are you going to sit there and actually consider like, am I gay? Why does that heroin addict think I'm gay? Are you going to concern yourself with their opinion? Or are you just gonna go like, no, you're gay, fuck off, and just keep walking down the street? Like, why the fuck does the opinion of a heroin addict concern you? What does he know about you, right? What insight could he possibly have? I mean, it might be interesting to think why would a heroin addict think that you're gay, but it's not the same as considering whether you're actually gay or not. Okay, so the purpose of this was to explain the correlation between intelligence and confidence in your own beliefs. And so, what are the things that we can say are true about uh, how agreeable or your how easy you are to make convinced of other beliefs? So first of all, um, let me think what direction I want to take this. So when you have choices between your belief or other belief, the factors that go into that are going to be your intelligence, they're going to be your confidence. Actually, your intelligence isn't going to It's linked to your confidence. I guess your intelligence, your confidence, uh, your respect for others, and your agreeableness, which stems from, these things. Like, if you're extremely intelligent, you're going to be more prone to being disagreeable. Um, like, all of these things actually relate to one another. Like, all of them are kind of the same thing. So, all of these things influence how easy you are to convince of something and what you use as origin for your belief. Generally, the less confident someone is in their beliefs, and the more respect they have for others, and the more agreeable they are, and at certain levels of intelligence, like the medium ones, you are prone to uh, trusting other people's judgment on things, and you are more prone to just taking someone else's word for it and not questioning it and accepting it as true because they obviously have better faculties to determine those things rather than you. And in some cases, they will, right? I guess if you're very intelligent, you might also sometimes realize where you don't actually have the resources to know this and where you should trust other people. And it gets a little bit more complex because an intelligent person will generally cross-reference different uh, points of view and then consider why they would have those points of view, and then they will come to, their own grouping of it. They're not just gonna trust like the first person they see. Well, for example, um, let's say you tell me you can do 5 push-ups, right? And I've never seen you in real life. I've never seen how big or strong you are, and I haven't made any like conclusions about your character or lifestyle. And you tell me you can do 10 push-ups easy. I might be Einstein, but I might not have enough data to come to a strong estimate of how many push-ups you can do. I'll just be stuck with some like general average number that most people can do. I'll be like, well, I mean, assuming that he's like a male in his 20s, then he can probably do like 15 at least, you know? Uh, like I will go off a very general estimate and I won't actually have enough data to, make a more accurate, precise one. And yeah, that is where if you tell me that you can do like 30, I will just have to believe you. I could still question it, but I don't have enough intelligence. I don't have enough data to be able to know whether that is true or not. So there are things that um, are going to be outside of your competence. And so I'm not saying that all intelligent, super intelligent people never believe others. No, they're just a lot. It's more that if they have observed something to be locally, and the difference between the medium and high is how many things they observe and how they validate those things. In a sense that um, let me think how to make this like easy to understand. My brain is going blank. I guess I will just go slowly. Um, so Okay, so um, an intelligent person is more likely, or how should I say, a high confidence person, which is linked to intelligence, but I'm not going to use the word intelligence. I've already explained how it's linked, but I'm not going to use intelligence here. A high confident person is more likely to trust his own local observations, and the more of these local observations they make, the less potential there is for someone to um, show them something that they hadn't already considered. For example, let's say you, I don't know, you remembered the color of this box. You saw that it is, or even like one of the random tabs I have, right? Or you're like, okay, I have two YouTube tabs open, right? And if you have, if you're paying attention to a lot of things, then you might observe that I have two YouTube tabs open. And then you might notice that I have two other tabs open. Or you might even count how many tabs I have open. And when someone else will present to you something about how many tabs I have open, then based on whether you observed it or not, it will change how likely you are to believe them. For example, if I was not paying attention to this at all, and someone told me, "Oh my God, bro had I don't know, 10 tabs of movies open or some shit, right?" And you, because you didn't pay attention to tabs, you're gonna be prone to other people uh being like, you're not gonna remember what I had open, therefore you won't have a reason to kind of like question that. You'll be like, oh, okay, I'll assume that is true until I see evidence of it being otherwise. Um, but if you had already seen the tabs and you already know how many tabs are open and what they were, then if someone told you that, you'll be like, well, you're wrong because you have already made your own observation. So I guess the other thing to add to it is your awareness. How many things you sample, how many things you pay attention to. And people that have very low awareness uh, generally have to rely on others to fill the holes in their awareness. And, well, same is true for intelligence or confidence or self-respect, right? If you have a deficit of something, you rely on someone else to fill that deficit, right? If you're unsure of something, you want someone else to validate it so that you can feel sure about it because you're unable to prove it to yourself, right? So, our need to rely on others for our beliefs is uh, not necessarily a sign of low intelligence, but it is linked to our lack of information. If we were omniscient and we knew everything, then we wouldn't have a reason to rely on other people as like a relay of things. If you already knew everything, why would you need to consult other people on it, right? So we consult other people to fill in holes in our own beliefs where we're unable to, or to trust our own belief. And here uh comes the like root thing about this. So reliance on external sources for belief originates from our lack of resources, or lack of resources in terms of confidence or our own intelligence, right? Or our own confidence or in our intelligence or our lack of awareness, right? Any of these things. So reliance on external sources always originates from a lack of resources. There is no other reason to consider the opinion of others. The only reason you are considering the opinions of others is if you think they know something that you don't. Otherwise, there is zero reason to consider the opinions of others. And if you are still considering the opinions of others excessively, then you're probably stuck in the, average intelligence bracket because you're unable to filter out useful from useless beliefs or perspectives, let's say, not beliefs. So how does this come into problem with worshipping something? Problem with worshipping something is, well, there isn't a problem with worshipping something. It depends what you worship. If you are, if we were to make this into a little bit more complex version, and we were to break it down a little bit into its components, so we have you versus other, and then we have you versus your intelligence. Um, yeah, and just other intelligence. Let's just say like this, just so it's cleaner. So when you're trying to come to a certain idea or idea, you get a choice in whose intelligence you want to believe. And you have a choice to believe your own intellect, your own judgment, uh, or actually, I think judgment is a better word. Uh, you have a choice which one of those paths that you take that will present to you an idea or some form of like which one you put your trust into, which one of those you yeah, which ones you worship. So so you have different paths to forming ideas or beliefs, and it matters what you put your trust into. For example, uh, you could put trust into things like science, right? And you could trust them with your life, like the science field, right? The medical field. For example, if you were to trust science in the 1960s, I believe, and you had some sort of a seizure or mental illness, then based on that belief, you would go and get a lobotomy because they used to do lobotomies back then, and for anyone who doesn't know what a lobotomy is, um, you're this let's say this is your head, um, side view, like this is your ear, this is your face, right? It's basically cutting like the frontal lobe out of your head, which is when you do that, the effect it has is it basically makes you into a zombie. Like you're without your prefrontal cortex, like good luck. You're not gonna be mentally ill. You're not gonna have any seizures anymore. Um, you're just you're just not gonna have a frontal lobe, you know? Uh, there's a movie about this, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or but but imagine like 30 or some like 50 years ago or something. If you were to put your faith in science, that's the solution that they would have had for you. You're schizophrenic, you have seizures, we just cut a massive chunk of your brain out, and no brain, no problem. And that's fine. And if you were to not trust science, then you're what people call today like those like anti-vax people or whatever. Like, oh, you're stuck in the rock age. Why don't you trust science? I mean, science is good, but you should apply, your own judgment on it. Like, would you like a big part of your brain to be cut out, like just using common sense? I personally wouldn't agree to that. That's like number one personal fear of mine. Imagine having a brain cut out and being forced to live. Uh, okay. So there's gonna be things that you're going to respect about other sources, and those, if you place your faith in them, if you worship those ideas, like I worship the idea of science, then it's same as saying science is absolute and science cannot be wrong, which a lot of you mediocrities out there will be like, yes, that is, the scientific method is so good. Except 50 years ago, you will also be the one supporting lobotomies, right? And science has, it's gotten pretty good recently, right? But historically, on most things, it has been wrong. And even today, there's a lot of things we still need to figure out, and we're working on them. So to say that whatever it is absolute requires it's just naive in my opinion. It's you're trusting something because you think that they have the best method and they're more intelligent than you and you're incapable of making your own judgment, or other people are not capable of making their own judgment, therefore they should just listen. So it's like, oh, you don't want to get a lobotomy, well, you're too stupid to get a say, get a lobotomy, you know? It's the equivalent of that but today, right? Oh, you're I'm not gonna get into like which parts of science are questionable today. I'm just gonna bring up lobotomy over and over again. So it's the same as so to put your trust into science is the same as worshiping the idea of science or the field of science. Uh, worship. And the problem with worshiping things is a lot of these people worship it without actually understanding how it works. For example, people that worship science, they're like, well, my doctor told me to do this. My doctor told me to get a lobotomy, and I have no idea why the fuck I need a lobotomy, but my doctor said that it will stop my brain from buzzing around and it will cure my mental illnesses, therefore, he must be correct. And maybe you might have like some surface level understanding, but if you're questioned on it uh deeply, you will probably go through patterns of you will give like one reasoning, then you'll give another reasoning. So first one will be like, well, I need my frontal lobe removed because um it's faulty and it's beyond repair. And then someone might be like, well, but some people have recovered without needing that type of surgery. Then you'll be like, well, um that's misinformation. That's very unlikely and I just want to not be schizo. And then you might be like, well, but frontal lobe might be an important part of your brain, and you'll be like, no, but it's not important because blah blah blah, and it's better than being fucking mentally ill. Whatever, you'll have like a lot of reasoning, and then eventually you'll get to a point where you're no longer qualified to justify why science wants to cut your brain off, or like cut your frontal lobe off. So you'll get to a point where you can't argue it anymore. You'll get to a point where I don't fucking know why they want to cut my frontal lobe. It's some science shit, and I'm not a doctor, and I can't explain that to you. And if you ever question people that do worship science, it always comes to this, by the way. It always, 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 always comes down to, well, not even science, anyone that worships anything, it always comes down to, I don't know, and I'm unqualified. Ask a doctor. And by doing that, what they're basically doing is they're removing responsibility from themselves. They're just saying, well, I don't know, but I think they know better. And the problem with that is it's kind of like that mindset is rooted in ignorance to some degree. Like the reason why you're going this route is because you have a belief in science. You have not a logical belief, not that you know that it's true. You just have a belief that it is good and that it will have your best interests, or that it is the best path, or that is the most competent um, option for you. But that is still a belief. Believing in science and believing in a god are fundamentally the same. You are believing in someone else's judgment over your own, and it's like a way of kind of accepting that you are incapable of making that judgment. You don't have the resources. Like you're like, well, I'm not the doctor. I don't know why they want to cut out my frontal lobe, and but I believe that they know what's best for me. Therefore, I will just trust them. And this kind of blind trust is, in my opinion, it's a little bit it's cheap. In a sense that for us as humans to be able to learn things and develop things and grow things, we need to understand how they function. Someone that does not know how something works is not able to iterate on it. Um, is not able to come to their own conclusions. It's kind of like a let me think how to word it. It's like a way of throwing your hands up and being like, well, I don't know, and I have no desire to know. And a lot of people hide behind these beliefs to avoid kind of like, and don't really form their own views on it. Don't bother to, read up or sample. Don't do it. Well, I'm not gonna get into, well, why do they do it? Some form of deficit, right? Either they don't believe they're intelligent enough or they don't have the energy to do so. They don't want to question it. Like, whatever, my doctor told me I need to get a lobotomy, I'm not gonna overthink it, right? I'm just gonna go and get it. And the problem is, if all of us were to do that, is we would end up in a society where there are no Einsteins, there are no Newtons, there is no science because science is pushed forward by people that have their beliefs and they want to document them and prove them. That's what science fundamentally is. It's by people kind of egoing the current understanding of things. Without these people, even the field of science wouldn't exist. So um, it's a little bit ironic to worship science, but also live your way in a live your life in a way where science wouldn't even exist if you were, or it wouldn't develop without if everyone was like you. So the problem with this position is it doesn't force you to develop a better understanding. It doesn't cause you to grow, and if it doesn't cause you to grow, then you're not able to provide any insight or uh, improve your competence. So in a sense, using a belief and fully trusting it is a crutch. For example, let's say you're a kid, right? And your mom told you that you should do X, right? Your mom told you you should, I don't know, whatever. What's like a random thing you should do? You should work at a post office because your father was a postman or something, right? And you're like, well, my parents are pretty smart and they're right about most things, and I'm a child. What the fuck do I know? All right? And you just like brainlessly just accept their judgment and trust their judgment and be like, well, mom, I'm gonna be a postman. And then your mother is like, well, you should invest in, I don't know. I saw this Hawk Tuah girl make a crypto coin. You should invest in it because she's really cool. And you're like, mom, I think you're really smart. I'm just going to listen to it without questioning it. If you are to just listen, regardless of how smart your source is, you might be listening to a genius and he might be correct on everything, right? Um, if you listen to someone, you have no reason to form your own understanding of things. For example, um, there's a big difference between listening to someone and understanding why someone thinks that way. For example, mom, why do you think I should uh, become a postman? And then she'll give you her reasoning. And well, a lot of the time it will be like, well, because your father was a postman. And then you know, it's kind of part of this a little bit. Eventually, just by talking to people, you'll realize that they actually don't have very strong reasons to believe things. They just believe them. For example, like, oh, I think your father is a was a postman, and I think that was really cool. And like we're in 2025, postman is kind of a dying profession. Everyone's a courier now with online shops and delivery and stuff like that. Not like the traditional postman delivering newspapers. Like no one does that anymore. It's a dying profession, right? So and your mother will go like, well, he was able to make money and he was very happy, and I think you would be very happy and make a lot of money. And if you look at the economy, you'll realize that she's just wrong, and most postmen now don't really make crazy money, or it's like a dying profession, and they're not going to be them in a few years potentially. Drones are going to deliver shit or whatever, right? And you have a choice, kind of like form your own understanding and be like, well, drones, economy, blah, blah, blah. Or you'd be like, mom is always right, and I'm just going to trust my mom. And then whenever like the economy hits and your job gets replaced, you're like, oh, mom was wrong. And you blame her instead of taking ownership over your own decisions. Um, and it's like, back to the lobotomy. Like, how will you feel if the reason why your life is basically over is because you just trusted what some fucking uh medical degree intern fucking told you. He was like, "Well, I think you should get a lobotomy." You're like, "Yep, let's go." And then you just trusted it and your life is basically over. Your life is just over. If you got a lobotomy, your life is over. You cannot live like a normal functioning human anymore. You've basically died. And isn't that terrifying to die? Like, by the hands of other people's foolishness? Like, what if they're wrong? What if you didn't have to get a lobotomy? What if all you needed to do was fucking some sleeping pills or some shit? I don't know. Like, what if that, and then you could have lived your life for another, like, 50 years? But instead, now you have a lobotomy and, you're stuck in this body where you know, I don't know, where you're, like, a lesser, like, your capabilities are, like, forever limited. So, the point I'm saying is that by trusting the judgment of other people, you're also exposing yourself to the mercy of their consequences. And if they're right, that is good. And if they're wrong, that is bad. And the other problem of trusting everyone's judgment is you don't have a reason to develop your own judgment. And if you don't develop your own judgment, you you never develop wisdom. You never develop, um, for example, you never develop the faculties to make your own decisions. Um, and if you don't develop those, then you basically end up being infantile for all of your life. You're basically a child. But even if you're 30 or 40 or 50, if you're forever following your science, your family, or religion, or whatever, you're basically a child. You cannot grow out of being infantile without taking ownership over your own judgment. It's like when a child is in a different situation, they will go to their parents and be like, "Mom, what do I do? I can't solve this math problem," right? And that, like for children, that's natural. That's how it should be. But for an adult that gets like into some, let's say you're 30 and you're in a serious situation and you're like, "Fuck, should I buy a house? Should I marry this woman? Or should I go to this country?" And then you're like, "Mom, could you give me some advice of what should I do?" And you're 30. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why the fuck are you still soliciting judgment of other people by 30? Like, you should have developed your own intelligence to make that decision. You're the one that has all the context. They're not going to be able to um, give it to you. Even if they're very intelligent, if you solicit them all the time, you become dependent on them, which makes that into a crutch, which means that you will never grow yourself. And let's say your mom dies and she was a genius and she was correct about everything. Now you're a big baby without a mother that can tell him what to do. Now you're stuck. And you're basically you will have to build from zero. So the main problem with worshipping isn't that the advice you're getting is wrong. The problem is that you have no stimulus or impetus to, or no reason to go and develop your own ideas. So, okay, I think I've already made my point, which ends up being a crutch. I will make a video on crutches. I've already recorded one, but I wasn't happy with it, so I will probably, maybe I will still post it, or I will record a new one. Um, That's pretty much it.